what's the interview format for operations role? Like how many rounds of interviews are there, whether it's technical, whether it's all behavioral? So do you have any structure for interviews?
You can expect 3 to 4 rounds. Typically, you'll have a phone screen in most environments, and I'm finding that in other roles as well. You'll have a phone screen, and then you'll be brought in for another round or two. And typically, you'll have rounds of interviews on that day where you see multiple people. And so your interviews, each interview could take half an hour to 45 minutes. And depending on the specific role that you're applying to within operations, there are a number of different roles within operations management fields that are still, some could be more technical than others. You may have a case study. We typically tend to have behavioral formats when it comes to people leadership. So we're looking for folks that can lead large teams. You're going to see a lot of behavioral type of interviews. If you're gearing yourself towards a more technical role, you can expect more case studies and more of a technical interview.
Okay.
So you'll often hear people refer to the STAR method, and largely when you're talking about behavioral interviews, that is one of the key standards that we're looking for in the way that you format your answers.
Okay, awesome. And what are the most common 4 to 5 questions that are asked for operations manager position?
So when you're applying to an operations manager role or position, you can expect to be asked any of these 5. Number 1 is always going to be about your background and your experience. This is what we sometimes refer to as your elevator pitch. Especially if you've been through business school, you understand what an elevator pitch is, but this is where you get to introduce who you are as a leader to your interviewer. This is your first chance to make a mark. You can expect people to ask when you have failed. That's not always a common question when it comes to interviews. Oftentimes in operations, we're looking to see, can you be critical of yourself and admit to when something didn't go well? And then can you also share what you learned by doing that, by having that failure? What did you then pull out of it? How did you succeed the next time? You can also expect to be asked about experience leading tough employees or team members, because it's not always going to be roses. You're going to have people that don't want to do what you're expecting of them, that want to do their own thing. How do you handle a leader who is not immediately following you? How do you really get someone on your team? How do you influence others? You can also be asked about how you achieve results. I can't say it enough in operations. It's really about your ability to deliver. So how do you do that? What about you is different as a leader than the next person that is able to then achieve those results and get things done? And then also who you are as a leader. What would your team say about you? What is your leadership style? These are all questions that you'll get pretty frequently in operations managers interview.
So it sounds to me, Gina, that it's more behavioral rather than in technical, right? Because the leadership questions about your background, or like when you're failed, right? All these are more the behavioral questions. So would you recommend aspirants to focus more on the behavioral side while when they plan to appear for any operations interview?
I would suggest to do a mix of both. A lot of it really depends on the specific role that you're applying to. Particularly the Pathways program through Amazon that I applied to, I did have to be able to speak to my technical side and be prepared to handle a case study in a shorter amount of time. And so depending on the company you're applying to, the specific role and the responsibilities, you may have a more technical approach to your interview where you're actually expected to take care of calculations in front of your interviewer. And so I would prepare for a bit of both.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Okay, and what are the best resources to prepare for interviews? Do you have any recommendations for certain books or blogs or websites?
You know, my recommendations are all along resources. And so the top 3 for me that I think are the best, number 1 is the company's website itself. That's where you'll find their particular language, their principles that they stand by, what's important to your employer, as well as any company business information that's open to the public. Number 2, any contacts or employees that you know within the industry itself or that particular company, they can share really valuable insight into how interviews are conducted and what to expect. And so I can speak in particulars about some things that you'll find in certain Amazon interviews, but depending on what you're applying to, really those industry contacts would be the key there. And also the news. In operations, it's really important to know what your company is doing, how do they fare in the market, and who is their competition. That's where you find a lot of good information.